It's been most popular to think that that leaders are really what we would call the great man theory of leadership. That leaders are born, they're not made. That those who have been great leaders have had some natural capacity within them that leads them to be great leaders. Unfortunately, this has a tendency to lead young leaders to believe that that's really what leadership is that it is men who have great capacity for leadership. We think of historical figures like Winston Churchill or like Napoleon, many others who have been historically significant figures that have accomplished great amounts of leadership. And we tend to think that if you're going to be a great leader, you're going to have to be one of these men. But the truth is that the great man theory of leadership has only appeared in a handful of people, and for whatever reason, they've maybe made significant historical strides in accomplishing leadership. But for the most part, leadership is not great man theories of leadership as much as it is people who know how to motivate teams. Dan Sullivan says in his book, Who Not How, that ascending levels of leadership are built not so much on how as it is on who. He points to people like Michael Jordan. The Chicago Bulls were not great merely because Michael Jordan was there, but the Chicago Bulls were great for a number of years because he was surrounded by other great people that offset who he was. It allowed him to shine. And he had Scottie Pippen. He had a guy that energized him by the name of Tim Grover. Um, we shouldn't think that leadership is something that is limited to people who have great capacities for leadership. But according to Dan Sullivan, it's the who's that we surround ourselves with. Who are your mentors? Who do you surround yourself with? Who encourages you? Who do you seek to emulate? Who do you seek to follow? Who offsets your weaknesses, coming alongside of you so that your own strengths can rise to the top? Sullivan goes on to say that you need who's to transform your vision. Who's give you greater purpose. They give you greater possibilities than your initial thoughts. Andrew Carnegie said that he wants his epitaph to read that here lies a man who is wise enough to bring into his service men who knew more than he. One of the greatest examples of leadership, Abraham Lincoln, has a book written about him by Doris Kearns Goodwin. You may have read it, about how Lincoln surrounded himself with his opponents, and he used those opponents to help strengthen the areas in which he was weak, to help him to listen to others when he didn't want to listen to what other people had to say. And so A Team of Rivals was the name of the book by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Peter Drucker said that no executive has ever suffered because his people were strong and effective. Good leaders know that they don't have to distance themselves. They don't feel intimidated or threatened by others who come alongside of them. John Maxwell said leaders often wrongly believe they must compete with the people close to them instead of working with them. Maxwell goes on to say that great leaders, the truly successful ones that are the top 1%, they all have one thing in common. They know that acquiring and keeping good people is a leader's most important task. Leadership begins with relationship. True, effective leadership begins with relationship. It's relationship that creates culture. Leadership comes through relationship. Today, I want to share just briefly about how great leaders create a great culture that strengthens a team's interpersonal dynamic. You see, first of all, what we want to see is that to create a great culture is to create a culture of energy. People are energized by the mission. The reason that a person comes into an organization and sticks with that organization for a lengthy period of time is because they believe that that organization's mission. They want to be a part of it, and that mission energizes them. And so, one of the greatest things that a leader can do to create a culture of energy is to provide clarity, to provide context around the mission. Great leaders want to share the wins with the people that are with them. They do the hard work to make sure that the people are acknowledged that are helping to accomplish the mission. It is a lazy leader that is afraid, that is reluctant to share the wins with other people. They create a culture of energy by sharing the wins, and they share the wins as those wins relate to the mission for the organization. Secondly, great leaders create a culture of inspiration. You see, energy is the electricity that motivates everyone from outside of them. They communicate the mission in an effective way, in an energizing way. But when electricity, that energy comes from the outside, it's external. Inspiration comes from the inside. It's internal. It is the internal motivation. Well, how do you motivate people? Well, energy is created in public. You share with the public. You share with the rest of the team members, hey, Joe helped us accomplish this. Let's all take a moment to celebrate what Joe did, or let's take a moment to celebrate what Sally may have done. They celebrate it publicly. But inspiration is more personal. It's private. When we want to inspire someone, we come to where they are and we say to them, hey, I noticed how you helped us to achieve this mission. Now, that implies that great leadership is someone who leaves the office. If you're a leader that never gets outside of your office, that never gets to where the people are, then you're not going to generate much inspiration. Great leaders come to where the people are, and they pull aside someone who has just accomplished an objective. They pull aside someone who has just accomplished a goal, and they say to that person, I noticed what you did, and I saw it. And I know that the only reason that our organization was able to accomplish this is because you worked hard to help us accomplish it. Publicly, externally creates a culture of energy, but personally, privately, is one of the greatest ways to create inspiration. And an inspired team member is a team member that is going to buy into the mission, and they are going to continue to push for the effectiveness of the organization, because not only do they buy into the mission, but they want to help the leader succeed. Thirdly, a great leader creates a culture of relationships, of unified relationships. They seek to build their team. You see, people enjoy doing a job when they enjoy the people they work with and the people they work for. Good leaders learn how to drive friendly competition. They want to drive this competition, but they want it to be a friendly competition. They don't create an atmosphere where there is paranoia, an atmosphere where there is fear that, hey, this person may get ahead of me, and if this person gets ahead of me, they're going to be the one who receives all of the acknowledgement. They're going to be the one who receives all of the glory. A good leader finds a way to build the team together. They create avenues for team members to acknowledge the good works of each other. When I've led teams, one of the ways that I seek to accomplish this is I seek to bring together the team. And the very first thing that we do in our team meetings is we have a season where others on the team can acknowledge jobs well done by their team members. This creates an atmosphere where people feel encouraged, an atmosphere where people desire to honor the other person. And this can only be done because there's not an atmosphere of paranoia. I've been in some teams where when there is this atmosphere of paranoia, they're afraid to acknowledge jobs well done by other team members, well, because they fear that the other team member might be working behind the scenes to push them out of the door. But great team leaders recognize the importance of developing a culture of relationships. When you have a culture that is built on healthy relationships, then you have an atmosphere where people can acknowledge that they're struggling with something without the fear of retribution. They recognize their weaknesses and they're willing to say, hey, this is an area that I'm weak in, but my friend over here, Jim, he's not weak, or my friend over here, she's not weak in this area, and I'd really like for him or her to come alongside of me and help me out on this objective, help me out on this project, because they can help offset my weaknesses. They create a culture of team building, of relationships. Fourthly, they create a culture of celebration. Now, I have to acknowledge this is one of the areas that I'm weak in, right? Type A personality. We continue to drive. We're always looking for the next win without celebrating the past wins. The problem with that is that when we become so busy driving toward the next objective, we don't really separate, or rather, we don't really celebrate what has been accomplished. And when we don't celebrate what has been accomplished, then people begin to get burned out. They never really feel like the contributions that they have made have mattered. And so by taking time intentionally to celebrate together creates a culture of celebration where we don't merely celebrate that we have accomplished something on our own, but that we celebrate together what we have been able to do as a team. Fifthly, a great leader that wants to develop an effective and a successful culture, they create a culture of empathy. It's been said that people don't leave jobs. People leave bad leaders. Good leaders recognize the signs of stress, and they seek to intervene before it leads to a resignation. They show empathy. Empathy is the ability to see the world through the eyes of other people, not to see our own reflection in their eyes. Great leaders don't need to constantly be built up, but they work to see things the way that their team members see them. You see, when we create a culture of empathy, what we're saying to our teams is that we're saying they matter to us. We care about you. And when a person works in a culture where they feel cared about, they're going to work that much harder. And when the team members work that much harder, well, it's simply going to increase the return on an investment. When people burn out, when people give up, when people feel unappreciated, when they feel misunderstood or like they don't even care whether or not they are understood, we have high turnover. And there is nothing that cuts into the bottom line of an organization quicker than high turnover. Constantly having to train more people. When A new employee requires 75% of the investment to be training. We only have 25% left for a return on the investment. And so you immediately cut into the bottom line by 75% because you're constantly having to train again and again and again. But when you create a culture of empathy, what you do is you create a culture where people get trained, and that 75% of training that only leaves 25% of room for a return on that investment flips. And ultimately it becomes that once the person has been trained up, well, the investment is operating at 100%. And when the investment is operating at 100%, then we're 10xing, 20xing, 100xing the investment or the return on the investment, because people know what they're doing, because they have felt that they have been in a place where they can learn. And having put in the effort to learn, they feel like they are really making a valid contribution. Great leaders create a culture that generates new ideas. You see, good leaders understand that people are the greatest assets. It's not the equipment, it's not the building, it's not the fixed assets, it's not the intellectual property, but it is the team. When the team feels like their talents and their gifts are appreciated, well, they take on a certain level of ownership. They feel like they've invested their lives into the company, and therefore they want that company, they want that organization to succeed. Taking ownership releases our most imaginative people to think in ways that others may have missed. They create new ideas that helps the company to succeed. A great culture generates new ideas. Most of the best ideas do not come from the top down. They come from the bottom up. It is people that live closest to the customer base, that lives closest to the constituency, that are able to communicate what the world is saying. It's great leaders that take time to walk on the floor of where the work is being done. If we're in a customer service type of an organization where there is a customer facing sales team, well, the managers need to listen to that sales team, because it's the sales team that are hearing from the customers. Create a culture that generates new ideas. New ideas are generated as people listen to the customers. The last thing that I want to share is that we need to create a culture that renews the hearts and the minds, the energy of the people, of the team. People get tired. They get burned out. They face problems in their personal lives. They face health issues. They face relational issues. They face financial issues. Their homes struggle. They get weary. But a good team leader is aware of what their team members need. They give them opportunities to reset themselves. They give them opportunities to take vacation, to take time off without interfering with that. They create for them opportunities to learn new skills, to learn how to do a more effective job. They give them opportunities to lead in new areas. You see, people want to flourish in their roles, and by allowing them to grow in their skills, by allowing them to lead in new ways, it energizes them in such a way so that it renews their heart, it renews their mind, it renews their drive. Give them opportunities to test their boundaries. Listen, micromanaging is the death of an organization. And if you're a micromanager, you are going to have a high turnover. And too many micromanagers say, well, people just don't work the way they used to work. They just don't have the work ethic that they used to have. No, if you're a micromanager, it's your fault that you have a high turnover. People don't want to work for micromanagers. It kills leadership credibility to be a micromanager. You'll run off your best people if you're a micromanager. You need to create a culture where people feel renewed and energized. And the best way that you can create that culture is to let people exhibit their talents and grow in their gifts and stretch their skills. You see, because a good culture increases the return on the investment because it increases productivity. Team members work together instead of against one another. It creates a quality of recruitment, or it increases your ability to recruit talented people. Happy employees attract talent. You don't attract talent because you have a great organization. You attract talent because you have great people. You have great team members. A good culture increases agility. People desire success more than they fear failure when they're in a good organization. And as a leader, you're going to create an environment where your people are either going to desire success and thereby create success, or you're going to create an environment where people are so afraid to fail that they don't ever try anything new. They simply want to succeed by virtue of not failing, not by virtue of surpassing what's expected. The people that work in an environment that is a healthy culture, they feel confident to make decisions because they feel like if they make the wrong decision, the people to whom they're responsible are going to have their backs. They're going to come alongside of them and they're going to help them learn. They're not going to give them a free pass, but they are going to at least acknowledge that they tried. They made a mistake, they own it. They learn from it and they become better because they feel like their boss has their back. So what do great leaders do? Well, they create a great culture. They create a culture that energizes. They create a culture that inspires. They create a culture that is built upon strong relationships. They create a culture of celebration. They create a culture of empathy. They create a culture that generates and welcomes new ideas. They create a culture that renews the hearts and the minds of the people. Be a good leader. It's hard work. But the great man theory of leadership, well, those days are largely over. And if there ever was such a thing, well, they're very few and very far between. And we may never experience that great man theory of leadership again. So let's be good leaders that create good cultures, that helps people to succeed, because that's what good leaders do. They help other people to succeed, recognizing that if I help my people succeed, my people are going to help me succeed, and together we will help the organization to succeed.